Part 21. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wu Nian. Chapter 201. Yayo rode a reindeer, looked around, and said, "Are you sure that the giant dragon came from this direction?" The female soldier said, "Yes, we can be sure." Yayo nodded slightly. The goblin team consisting of 20 people approached in the direction of Chen Mu. Since these elves are the offspring of elves and humans, with half elves and half human genes in their bodies, elves do not recognize them as elves, and humans do not recognize them as humans, so they gave themselves another name. Goblin. After driving for a while, we happened to pass by a treehouse village where goblins gathered. The goblins are on top of the treehouse, looking here curiously. "Your Majesty Queen," at this time, a girl flew over and landed in front of Yayu. She saluted Yayu. She looked at Yayu respectfully and said, "My name is Nan. My father is from this village." Village chief. "My father, Earth, went hunting with the people in the village and hasn't come back yet." "Excuse me, Your Majesty Queen, are you here late at night? Is there anything urgent?" "Nan can arrange it." Nan looked at Yayu with a smile. Yayo said, "There was a giant dragon flying over your treehouse during the day. I wonder if you saw it?" Nan said, "A giant dragon?" She said, "I saw it." Nan said with a smile, "That is a very, very huge dragon." When Yayu heard this, she said, "Where is it now? Which direction did it fly to?" Nan's eyes were filled with doubts. She looked at Yayo and said, "It's nearby." "Around here?" Yayo frowned. Ji, who was on the side, came out and said, "This is impossible. If such a huge creature is nearby, there is no place for it to hide. We should be able to see it at a glance." Nan said, "Nan didn't lie to you. If you don't believe it, you can come with me." As she spoke, she flapped her wings and led the way. Yayo said, "Follow me." Everyone follows Nan. Nan led the team out of the forest. The field of vision becomes wider. At this time, Nan landed on the ground. She raised her little hand and pointed into the distance. Then she looked at Yayu and said, "My queen, that giant dragon is resting over there." When Yayu heard this, she looked in the direction of Nan's finger. It was pitch black in the distance. From a distance, you can only see the forests and mountains under the dark clouds. "Where is the dragon?" Yayu frowned. Is this little guy lying to herself? Ah! Suddenly, a scream rang out from within the team. Bang! Yayu was startled. She frowned and looked at the source of the sound. "I saw an elf warrior wearing armor struggling to get up. There were wings behind him. It seemed that he saw something incredible and was so frightened that he fell to the ground." After getting up, the goblin warrior stared into the distance, his face filled with horror and disbelief. Yayo frowned. What is that?" Suddenly, someone shouted. A goblin also made a sound. She seemed to have discovered something, her eyes were full of disbelief. The female goblin quickly stretched out her hand, pointed to the mountain in the distance, and said loudly to her companion, "Scales, look at that mountain, there is reflection on the mountain. Those are scales, they are scales. Mountain. Scales." Yayo once again looked in the direction pointed by Nan, focusing on the mountain. The huge mountain was under the clouds, and since it was night and the moonlight was obscured by the clouds, the mountain was hidden in shadow. It was a very huge mountain. The forest next to it looked like grass at the foot of the mountain. The mountain peaks stretched endlessly, and only a dark mountain shadow could be seen. At this moment, moonlight fell through the dark clouds on the mountain. The moonlight is reflected away and passes through the reflected moonlight. Yayo took a closer look, and her pupils condensed slightly. Because she saw scales. Pieces of black scales covered the mountain. Scales. Such big scales, they are too big. Yayu was a little unbelievable. At this moment, the mountain moved. This movement and the clattering sound were very loud. In this quiet night, when the mountain moved, the sound was extremely loud. Everyone was attracted by the movement and looked over there one by one. I saw something lifted. It was something extremely huge, like a mountain rising from the ground. Under the shocked gaze of everyone, a pair of extremely huge pupils lit up. Those eyes were like a pair of giant underworld lanterns hanging high in the sky. A pair of eyes that are unbelievably big. The moment these pupils light up, Yayo couldn't help but swallowed her saliva, her face turned pale. The reindeer riding beneath him began to pace restlessly. An elf soldier's pupils were trembling. What kind of monster is this? The team was no longer moving forward. Ji looked at Yayo subconsciously and said, "Queen, do you want to withdraw?" Yayo nodded slightly, "Let's go." After she saw this terrifying scene, she really didn't have the courage to go any closer to it. The goblin team is planning to leave. In the distance, Chenmu was wondering what these half-elves were doing to find him, but he found that these goblins began to turn around and leave. "Are you leaving now?" Chenmu thought they had some contact with him, but this is what happened. However, they don't want to come to me, so I have to go to them. Before, Chenmu was thinking about how to solve the problem of war and prevent the number of animals in his breeding area from decreasing. He has thought of the answer, and now he has to act. Originally, Chenmu was planning to go to these half-elves tomorrow, but now they are here, so there is no reason for him to let them go. Thinking of this, Chenmu said, "Stop." As soon as he opened his mouth, a gust of wind whistled. The forest was rustling. The goblin team, which was thousands of meters away from Chenmu, heard Chenmu's voice and felt the frenzied wind at the same time. Hulala! Yayo and others were stunned, and they subconsciously turned their heads to look in the direction of Chenmu. Who was talking just now? The goblins were a little confused. Seeing this, Chenmu realized that he was too far away. Although his voice was transmitted, they would not judge that he was talking because of the distance. It's really troublesome. Forget it. Chenmu said slowly, "It's me." As the voice sounded, Chenmu's huge body turned into golden light. At this moment, all the fairies nearby looked in the direction of Chenmu. Looking at the golden light emanating from Chenmu's huge body, all the fairies who saw the scene couldn't help but widen their eyes. The golden light slowly condensed. From the 1,000-meter-long body, it turned into a 2-meter-long golden sphere, and the sphere began to take shape. In this deep night, the golden light emitted by the golden ball illuminated the surroundings, making the surroundings look like daytime. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 202. The golden light formed a new form. Soon, the golden light slowly dispersed. In order to facilitate communication, it is natural to look like these elves. However, Chenmu was very repelled by elf wings. Elf wings are just too slow. Among the Earth's original organisms, the fastest flying insect is the dragonfly, and the dragonfly's speed is 58 kilometers per hour. This speed is much slower than that of an albatross. The speed of an albatross is not even the fastest among birds, but it can reach a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. The wings of elves are insect wings, and their speed is naturally slow. Therefore, although Chenmu wanted to become more similar to an elf and gain a sense of intimacy, he still very much rejected elf wings. So, when the golden light dissipated, what appeared in the elf's field of vision was a creature that looked somewhat like an elf. The only thing that is different from the elf is his pair of wings. Those are the wings of an albatross, not the wings of an elf. But his appearance is that of an elf, with pointed ears and long hair. The goblins below were completely attracted by the scene before them. They unknowingly got off their mounts and came down from mid-air. One by one, they knelt on the ground and looked at Chenmu in the sky. Their eyes were full of sincerity and respect. After the shaping was completed, Chen Mu slowly opened his eyes. He spread his wings behind him, flapped his wings, flew in front of these fairies, and slowly landed. When he took a look, he found that these goblins were already kneeling on the ground, looking sincere. See this? Chen Mu was a little confused. What are these guys doing? Elf Queen Yayo has met the elf god. Yayo's voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Chen Mu was suddenly a little confused. Have you become an elf god out of nowhere? Moreover, what ghosts and spirits are there? After Chen Mu thought about it for a while, he roughly understood. No matter when, as long as they are highly intelligent beings, they have the ability to think, and if they have the ability to think, there will be problems. When there are questions, there will be questions that have answers and there will be questions that have no answers. When they cannot understand certain problems, they will start to imagine some gods and the like, attribute them to the deeds of gods, and slowly, they will evolve their own beliefs. As long as they are advanced beings, they will create their own beliefs. Since they claim to be elves, they naturally have elves' beliefs. Although these half-elves call themselves fairies, in their hearts they still regard themselves as elves. Therefore, when they saw Chen Mu transform into an elf-like creature, but it was a creature they had never seen before and could not understand, they would naturally preconceptions that Chen Mu was the elf god in their faith. Only. Didn't these guys see that the wings behind me were wings? Never mind. Chen Mu didn't bother to explain. You regard me as an elf god, so I can just use this identity to do something. Chen Mu looked at the pointed-eared fairy queen in front of him, glanced at the slender long knife on her waist, and said, "Is that a weapon you are wearing on your waist?" When Yayo heard this, she said, "Yes, we are not here to attack you. We just heard that there is a giant dragon here, so we want to come here to see the situation. We don't know that the giant dragon was transformed by you." She guessed wrongly what Chen Mu meant when he mentioned the weapon. Chen Mu could feel the tension in her words. Chen Mu said, "The presence of weapons means there is war. Are you at war while I am away?" Yayo was stunned, and there was cold sweat on her forehead. "God, it's not us who deliberately provoked the war, it was the elves. The elves have been actively provoking wars." She was very uneasy. She felt unprecedented pressure from Chen Mu. When Chen Mu asked about the war, she became even more uneasy. The elf god only exists in records. It is said that she is the god of the elves. She does not need to eat or drink. She is also invincible and immortal. She is also the guardian of the elves. So, will the elf god, like the elves, regard fairies as symbols of impurity and filth? Could he be thinking about getting rid of the goblins? If it does, it's all over. Hearing Yayu mention the elves, Chen Mu's heart skipped a beat. You are at war with the elves? Why? When Yayu heard this, she hesitated for a moment, and for fear of offending Chen Mu, she could only choose to answer truthfully, "We fairies, are the product of humans and elves, and then, those elves think we are impure, is filth, a black spot on the elves, saying that we have blasphemed the original intention of the God of creation, so they want to obliterate us." Speaking of this, Yayo was very uneasy and her palms were sweating. So that's it? The original intention of the Creator God? The elves were created by me. To the elves, I guess I am the Creator God, right? My original intention. My original intention is to let them work for me. As long as they have enough food and drink, they can simultaneously transfer the progress of their evolutionary energy to me. Fairies are indeed the product of elves and humans, but since both elves and humans were created by me, the food, drink, and evolutionary energy gained by the fairies they reproduce will also be transferred to me simultaneously. Thinking of this, to say that the people who violated my original intention should be the elves? Waging a war will not only reduce the number of fairies, but also the number of elves, and the evolutionary energy I obtain will also be reduced. How stupid! This is simply killing one's own people. Thinking of this, Chenmu was suddenly very depressed. God, what did you just say? At this time, a voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Chenmu came back to his senses and looked at Yayo, only to see Yayo looking at Chenmu in astonishment. Looking at Yayo's expression, Chenmu said, I'm saying that the guys of the elves are not smart. They are the ones who violated my original intention. Yayo was slightly startled, and she couldn't help but look at Chenmu. Chenmu said, I don't want there to be a war in this world, nor do I want there to be any war between the fairies, elves, and humans, understand? Hearing this, Yayo's eyes lit up, yes. Yayo understands. It's just, my God, even if we goblins don't do this, the elves? Yayo was a little helpless. Chenmu said, I need a manager. He looked at Yayo and said, your name is Yayo, right? Are you the king of fairies? Yayo nodded slightly. Chenmu said, get up. I don't like to talk to people with my head down. My neck will feel uncomfortable. Yes, Yayo slowly stood up. Chenmu crossed his arms and looked at Yayo, the king of the fairy tribe will be replaced in the future. Yayo was stunned. She was stunned for a moment and looked at Chenmu. Suddenly, Yayo's body was swallowed by the golden light. The fairies next to her were stunned and could only stare at the scene blankly. Yayo raised her hand and looked at Chenmu. As the gold lighted up, Yayo's body changed. A pair of pure white wings appeared behind her. A head of blonde hair and white wings slowly spread out. To put it simply, it is a replica of Chenmu's current form, but it is a female. Yayo looked back at the white wings behind her. Chenmu crossed his arms, from now on, you are no longer an elf or a fairy. Your future duty is to maintain world peace. Remember, I don't want to see any war among the highly intelligent creatures in this world. Yayu's eyes lit up, and she quickly knelt down on one knee to Chenmu and bowed heavily, Yayu obeys your command. When Chenmu saw this, he retracted his gaze and turned away. In this way, the war was settled. My God! Chenmu paused slightly and looked back at Yayu. Yayu looked at Chenmu, my God, Yayu, not an elf, nor a fairy, then Yayu is. Chenmu was stunned. By the way, who is she? Chenmu glanced at Yayu, looked at the wings, and said, then you are an angel. Anyway, I didn't create an angel last time, so I can create one now. After leaving the sentence, Chenmu flapped his wings and flew away under the gaze of the fairies and Yayu. In Western mythology, when certain elves pass certain tests, they will undergo a ceremony to transform from elves into angels. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 203. Queen Ji stood up and walked behind Yayo. She looked at the queen with holy white wings in front of her. When Yayo heard this, she turned sideways and looked at Ji behind her. Ji looked in the direction where Chenmu left in the distance. She said, is he, the elf god? Yayo shook her head and said, no. Ji was stunned. She subconsciously looked at Yayo, no. Yayo said, at first, I thought he was the elf god like you, but now that I have come to my senses, I find that he is not. Then he is. Ji's eyes were full of doubts. Hearing this, Yayo whispered, the god of creation. Ji was stunned. She couldn't help but look at Yayo. Of course, these are just my guesses. As she said this, Yayo raised her right hand, looked at her right hand, and then looked at a big stone next to her. She stretched out her right hand and pointed it at the big stone. The big stone with a diameter of about half a meter floated up with Yayo's movements, and its body suddenly dispersed. The stone with a diameter of half a meter was directly disassembled into small stones by invisible forces, suspended in the air. Yayo clenched her hands. The small stones closed again, shrank instantly, and were directly compressed into a high-density stone the size of a fist by invisible forces. This scene, which was completely out of common sense, attracted the attention of other fairies. "Queen, what is this?" Seeing this scene, Ji couldn't help but be surprised. Yayo flapped her pure white wings and flew into the air. She was flying in the air. The bright moonlight fell on Yayo, and Yayo, wearing silver armor, exuded a holy silver glow. In the sky, the wind blew, her long golden hair fluttered, she slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of blue eyes. At this moment, Yayo looked holy and beautiful, just like an angel. Or, at this moment, she was an angel. The fairies below saw the scene and were fascinated for a while. Yayo looked at the fairies below and said, "From today on, I will no longer be a fairy, nor an elf, nor a human. I am an angel. I will be a messenger from heaven, follow the will of my God, and maintain the peace of this world." Hearing this, Ji was slightly stunned and said, "But, Queen." When Yayo heard this, she looked at Ji. Ji said, "Fairies can't live without a queen." Yayo's mouth corners slightly raised, and said with a smile, "Queen, you will be the queen, this is God's will." After the voice fell, Yayo flapped her wings and flew away under the gaze of everyone. Looking at Yayo's back as she left, Ji was stunned for a long time and couldn't come back to her senses. On the other side, Shenmue didn't actually leave. He just turned back into an atom and then observed the scene with his consciousness. Of course, Shenmue didn't think that Yayo would disobey him. The reason why he hid and observed was because he was too idle. Even if Shenmue went to other places, he would have nothing to do. What Shenmue had to do now was to stop the boring wars in this world and let the highly intelligent life in this world eat, sleep, and have children. Anyway, don't fight, don't suppress the number of yourself to hinder Shenmue's progress in obtaining evolutionary energy. Therefore, the method Shenmue thought of at present is a very simple method. The Earth is Shenmue's breeding farm. Since it is a breeding farm, if you want them not to do something, it means that the farmer wants to manage it. The most direct way for the farmer to manage the farm is for the farmer to manage it directly. However, as the farmer himself, Shenmue is currently in a state of too lazy to manage. So there is another way, that is to hire a group of workers to help him manage this large farm. The workers must be smart, not too stupid. The fairy queen, as the queen of the fairy tribe, can keep the fairies from being destroyed, so she must have her own two brushes. As a free tool person, helping him work and manage this large farm is definitely appropriate. Of course, since they are to manage the world, they have to give these workers some abilities. If they can't even beat the animals on the farm, let alone manage. Wings are obviously much more powerful than insect wings, which makes it easier for them to work better and handle things faster. As for abilities, they can be used as weapons to control the earth, and then they can adapt instantly and heal themselves quickly to ensure that they will not die. However, since they are working for themselves on their own farm, they must have an identity. God's messenger, angel. This identity is very suitable. In this way, Shenmue gave her orders and everything was ready. The tool man began her free working life. As a farmer, Shenmue must supervise her from time to time to see if she is lazy or something. Looking at the current situation, Yayo's performance is still good. Okay, Shenmue is very satisfied. However, the earth is so big, it will be difficult for Yayo to take care of it alone. I need to find a few more intelligent guys to help me manage the farm. Shenmue's body turned into an angel, flapped his wings, and flew away. At the same time, Ji and others returned to the fairy town. In the queen's palace, Ji stood in front of the wall, looking at the mural in front of her. The mural depicts a huge tree that reaches straight into the clouds. On the tree, there lives a group of winged girls. Several girls were sitting on the branches, looking into the distance. In the distance, a girl with wings was sitting on another big tree. The big tree turned into a tree house, and the elves lived inside. This mural recorded the story of the elf god teaching the elves how to build a tree house on the tree. Legend has it that the elf god has bird wings, and with just one glance, he can turn a small tree into a huge tree. G muttered, I always thought these things were just ancient legends, but today it seems that it is not the case. Suddenly, G seemed to have discovered something. She walked around, looked at the mural in front of her, and then turned back and looked at the murals around her. The elf gods are all female, and the elf gods in the legends seem to be all female. G thought of the male god who looked like an elf today. Is he really the creator god? The next day, during the day. On the other side, the elf army has been assembled. The huge elf army consisting of more than 6,000 elves is marching towards the direction of the fairy capital. A cloud of dust was raised along the way. Bane, the prince of the elves, was riding a reindeer and moving forward. Although elves are different from fairies, they all have wings, but flying requires a lot of energy. The larger the body and the faster the flight, the energy required, in addition to this, is the accumulation of lactic acid. Of course, these are silicon-based creatures, but because they are human templates, although the main structure is different, the body will also secrete substances similar to lactic acid. Simply put, even if you have wings, you will feel sore after flying for a long time. So when traveling for a long time, the elves will also choose to ride mounts. Of course, while the army was rushing towards the fairies, Yayo, as an angel, was also flapping her wings and rushing towards the army. She was looking forward to starting her indefinite working life. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 204. Prince, what do you see over there? A voice came from beside Bane. Hearing this voice, Bane glanced at the female guard beside him. The female guard was looking up and seemed to have discovered something. Bane looked in the direction the guard was looking. There was a blue sky and white clouds in front of him. Under the white clouds, a small shadow could be seen, and the shadow was approaching the side at a very fast speed. That thing didn't look like a bird, nor like other flying creatures. Judging from the height, it didn't look like an elf. Bane squinted his eyes and looked carefully. Suddenly, his pupils condensed slightly. As time went by, he could see a rough appearance. Wings, Bane said subconsciously. It seems to be the elf god, the female guard suddenly said. Hearing this, Bane was stunned. How is it possible? He couldn't believe that the legendary god would suddenly appear here. It was one thing to be unable to believe it, but after realizing that there was this possibility, Bane raised his hand and made a still gesture. Bane pulled the reins, and the reindeer slowly stopped, and the army behind him also slowly stopped. Bane raised his face and looked up. Suddenly, a gust of wind came whistling. The figure of the angel Yayo quickly fell from the sky, accompanied by the gust of wind. Yayo's figure slowly stopped. She stopped in front of this army, her wings slowly flapped, and she stood in the air. In fact, hovering is impossible under normal circumstances. The characteristics of the wings of the albatross are huge and have powerful gliding ability, but hovering is not the ability of the wings of the albatross. The reason why Yayo can hover is mainly due to the ability to control. Now Bane in front can already see Yayo's appearance. Seeing Yayo in front of him, Bane was slightly startled, and he frowned. Fairy Queen Yayo. Bane recognized Yayo's identity at once. The moment he recognized Yayo, Bane's hand was already on the hilt of the knife at his waist. After seeing Yayo's appearance, the other elves also took out their weapons. Bows, spears, and blades, all taken out. After all, the fairy queen dared to come here alone, which means that the fairy army is likely to be nearby. Seeing Bane's solemn expression, as if facing a great enemy, Yayo said, "Wrong, I am not the fairy queen now. I am an angel," Yayo said. Bane frowned. "Angels? I haven't heard of them. The fairy clan is a bastard born from the betrayal of the elf clan and the secret relationship between the human clan. Your existence has already blasphemed the elf god, blasphemed the creation god, and violated the consciousness of the creation god. Now, you actually made yourself look like the elf god, blaspheming the European elf god." Bane pulled out the slender saber at his waist, and pointed the tip of the knife at Yayo. "We, the elf clan, will not forgive you." At this time, the archers also pulled the long-term workers to the full and aimed at Yayo. As long as Bane gave an order, the arrows would penetrate Yayo's body. Yayo listened to what Bane said, and she felt a surge of anger in her heart, rushing straight to her brain. But when she thought of what Chenmu had said to her, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and adjusted her emotions. "I am the angel Yayo, not a fairy or an elf," Yayo said slowly. "I came here to stop the war, not to provoke a war." With the ability Yayo currently has, it is too easy to kill the elves in front of her, but as an angel, what she needs to do is to stop the war. Stopping the war is what angels should do, and it is also the absolute order issued by Chenmu. After Yayo adjusted her emotions, she slowly opened her eyes, revealing her blue eyes. She looked at the elves in front of her with a cold face, and said, "All elves listen." She slowly flapped her wings and flew a little higher. "Last night, the god of creation descended and gave me this angelic body. He told me that he didn't want war to exist in this world, and he didn't want us to kill each other, so he asked me to be his messenger to stop this war," Yayo said expressionlessly. "So, you go back." Bane's pupils condensed slightly. "Nonsense." Bane said, "How could the god of creation descend on the dirty fairy tribe's territory? Even if the god of creation really intends to find a messenger, he should look for it on the holy and noble elves' side. How could he go to your side?" "Yayo, you are lying." He raised his head and looked at Yayo. "It seems that the fairy tribe has given up even the most basic and precious honesty. In order to avoid war, they even lied and pretended to be the messenger of the god of creation." "Damn it," Bane's face was full of anger. "Blame the god of creation. You deserve to die." He was extremely angry. In the belief of the elves, the elf god is the god who protects them, and the god of creation is the god who created them. Now the elves' most respected god has been insulted by Yayo. As the prince of the elves, how could Bane bear this? After saying this, Bane stretched out his hand, took the bow and arrow from the guard, and then put the long arrow on the farm hand, aiming at Yayo in the air. The long arrow flew out of the string and shot at Yayo in the air. However, the long arrow suddenly stopped halfway through its flight. The long arrow was suspended in the air, as if time had stopped, stagnating in the air. This scene made Bane frown. Although he didn't quite understand what was going on, his anger towards Yayo didn't disappear. "Archers, shoot!" As Bane's voice fell, the archers who had been ready behind Bane shot long arrows one after another. Those arrows were like a storm, whistling towards Yayo in the air. However, when these long arrows approached Yayo, they all seemed to be controlled by something, deviated from their original trajectory, and gathered in front of Yayo. As the long arrows piled up, a sphere made up of countless long arrows appeared 5 meters in front of Yayo. The sphere gradually grew larger as the long arrows entered. Seeing this, Bane was stunned. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The sphere seemed to have some kind of magic power, sucking all the arrows in. It became a sphere the size of a football. Yayo raised her hand, opened her palm, and the sphere flew into her hand and was held in her hand. Bane was a little stunned when he saw this scene. What is this? The elf army behind him also began to become noisy. Miracle! It is a miracle! Did she really see the God of creation? Did she lie to us? Hearing the voice behind him, Bane frowned. He looked at Yayo in the sky again. Yayo said, God told me that this world does not need war. Since there is no need for war, your weapons are useless. As soon as the voice fell, all the weapons in the hands, waists, and backs of the soldiers of the elf army turned into a little bit of golden light. My sword. My bow and arrow. My knife. What's going on? The elves watched those weapons turn into golden light, and the golden light connected together, turning into a golden light, passing through the sky and slowly dissipating. After seeing this scene, the elves were stunned. Bane, the prince of the elves, was also a little stunned when he saw this scene. Yayo waved her hand, and the iron ball made of bow and arrow in her hand flew out. Boom, with a muffled sound, the iron ball fell to the ground with a loud noise. This loud noise awakened all the elves, and Bane also came back to his senses. He looked at where Yayo was, but found that Yayo flapped her wings and flew away. Bane watched for a long time. Prince, she didn't seem to lie to me. The voice of the female guard came. Bane said, the weapons of an army of more than 6,000 people were gone in the blink of an eye. I can't think of anyone else who can do this except God. Bane paused, and he said helplessly, it seems, the existence of fairies is reasonable. We have always been wrong. On the other side, Chen Mu saw the scene through his consciousness. He nodded slightly, good, let's get started. Warm TI. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 205. Chen Mu flapped his wings and soared over this continent. More than 700 years of volcanic eruptions and plate movements have caused the 7 continents to change their appearance. Now there are only 4 continents left. Europe, Asia, and Africa, the 3 continents have merged together, and North America and South America have also become one piece. After that, Oceania and Antarctica are still in their original places. The place where Chen Mu is located is the largest land on the Earth at present, that is, the new continent formed by the fusion of Europe, Asia, and Africa. The land area of this continent is too large. There are all kinds of creatures living in it, from elves, goblins, humans, orcs, etc., all live here. However, this is not surprising, because when Chen Mu created them, he created them in this continent. As for whether there are creatures in other continents, Chen Mu does not know at present. Of course, he does not care about this issue. Chen Mu is now idle and plans to select some people on the earth as free labor, so he is flying in the air. However, not long after flying, Chen Mu heard a voice. Roar. The whole forest was shaken by the roar, and countless birds flew out of the forest. Hearing the sound, Chen Mu stopped flying and looked at the source of the sound curiously. There is a volcano over there, but it has been dormant. It is estimated that this is the volcano left when the Earth's volcanic activity was frequent. It looks like it has not erupted for a long time, and there are trees growing under the mountain. Chen Mu flapped his wings and approached the volcano. He opened his consciousness and found that there was a canyon here, and there was a black dragon in the canyon. This is a dragon in Western mythology, which looks like a big lizard with flesh wings. However, now the flesh wings of this dragon have been shot through by a giant bow and arrow, and a huge steel arrow is also inserted into its body, and the arrow pierces its body. At this moment, it is lying on the ground, wailing and struggling in pain. But it is useless. Chen Mu also noticed that in the distance, a group of humanoid creatures were holding spears and looking at the dragon from a distance. They were dressed simply, and the lion ears on their ears and the long lion tails behind them particularly attracted people's attention. Orcs, Chen Mu muttered. Chen Mu had previously created countless orcs by fusing animal and human genes. Among them, lion and human genes were fused to create lions. These were obviously lions. After the black dragon slowly stopped moving, the female lions walked over with spears. More than a dozen female lions raised their spears and stabbed the black dragon's vital points. After the stab, the dragon was no longer moving. It was obviously dead. The female lions began to gather around, picked up the blades, and began to dismember the dragon. Seeing this, Chen Mu's eyebrows stretched slightly. Lions in the wild, male lions protect the territory, and female lions hunt. Even if the genes of lions and humans are fused to become lions, is the social composition like this? Or is it female lions hunting? It's just that hunting such a huge dragon. This is not normal. The height of these lion men is generally about 1.8 meters, while the dragon is estimated to be more than 20 meters long, and its shoulder height is more than 10 meters. You know, it is a behemoth as tall as a 3-story building. Compared with the lion men, the size difference is too big. If it were a lion, they would not easily hunt some huge creatures in the wild, because large creatures are more dangerous, and there are more easy to hunt creatures on the grassland. Now, these lion men have merged human genes and should have stronger wisdom. They should know that dragons are not easy to deal with. With human wisdom, they should be able to find prey that is easier to deal with. Why deal with dragons? At this time, a female lion man stood aside on a horse. She is the commander of this operation, Joan. Another female lion came over. Lord Kian, it's solved. Kian nodded slightly. Humans only have 3 dragons. Now one is dead, there are only 2 left. As she said that, Kian pulled the reins and said, let's go back. It is obvious that the purpose of these female lions hunting this dragon is not to eat meat, but to deal with humans. Seeing this, Chen Mu understood. It is a war again. This dragon is a human dragon. No wonder. In this way, Chen Mu is a little unhappy. It has just let Yayo solve the war problem between the goblins and the elves, and now the orcs are going to go to war with humans again. No wonder there is only 1% of the evolutionary energy progress in more than 700 years. If it goes on like this, how can the evolutionary energy progress be much? When elves fight with goblins, no matter whether they win or lose, the number of both races will decrease. When humans fight with orcs, no matter whether they win or lose, the number of humans and orcs will also decrease. It is almost inevitable that some intelligent creatures will be allowed to develop themselves, which will cause war. Let alone intelligent creatures with different looks, even if they look the same. On Earth more than 700 years ago, there was only one highly intelligent creature, humans. Wasn't there war every day during that period in ancient times? But this situation is not what Chen Mu likes. I must intervene to stop these meaningless and boring wars that will cause me losses. Chen Mu thought of using atoms directly to create angels, and then give orders to those angels. But obviously that won't work. The creatures created by atomic creation only have basic knowledge, and they do not understand many things. Unless you are willing to spend time teaching them and telling them what is good and what is bad. The best situation at present is just like looking for Yayo, looking for intelligent creatures on the earth who know what peace is and what kindness is, and let them do work for them. Oh my God, this is so troublesome. Chen Mu is going crazy. Chen Mu has been lazy for a long time. He really doesn't want to be a nanny to raise children, but it feels very troublesome to find someone by himself. Just when Chen Mu had a headache, he noticed something. The moment he saw that thing, Chen Mu was stunned for a moment. That is. Ahead is the sea, looking over there from a high altitude. Something could be vaguely seen in the distance, and it was very, very high. Things that grow on the sea. Chen Mu opened his consciousness and looked over there. Upon seeing it, Chen Mu's eyes suddenly lit up. This is an extremely huge banyan tree soared into the sky, extremely huge. Isn't that the template of the banyan tree that I left behind more than 700 years ago? More than 700 years ago, the volcano erupted and magma spread everywhere. Chen Mu thought the banyan tree was dead. Now when Chen Mu thought about it, he understood. The banyan tree is actually Chen Mu's clone. After Chen Mu's original body gained instant adaptability, the banyan tree, as Chen Mu's clone, naturally also gained instant adaptability. With the ability to adapt instantly, the banyan tree can naturally survive without eating or drinking, and at the same time ignore the magma. The banyan tree is, what about those little guys? Chen Mu looked through his conscious vision and found that above the canopy of the banyan tree, little guys with familiar looks were flying around above the canopy. Some sat on the branches and looked at the distant scenery. These little guys are still here. Chen Mu was happy. If the little ones are all here, they should have learned a lot of knowledge after so many years. Then, can they become sources of angels? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 206. Levi sat on the tree trunk as usual, looking in the direction where the ancestor left. One day more than 700 years ago, the soul of the ancestor left from that direction. From that day on, the ancestor only left them a place to live and protect their bodies, but the soul of the ancestor left. Levi didn't know why the ancestor left and why he abandoned them, but Levi believed that the ancestor would definitely come back. Because she and her sisters were all children of the ancestor. Although the soul of the ancestor left, the body was still there. So, at the beginning, Levi and her sisters flew around with other sisters as usual, looking for fresh water for the big tree. That kind of life lasted for a very, very long time. Later, some humans found them and wanted to capture them. In order to protect the body of the ancestor, Levi started a war with humans. Levi and her sisters found that human weapons could not hurt them at all, and they could easily revive all things and kill those humans. Therefore, Levi and her sisters won that war. After that, humans never came to see them again. Green and the others resumed their previous lives and continued to deliver fresh water to the tree. This kind of life lasted for a long time. Until one day, the ground trembled, the volcano erupted, and the fresh water and sea water began to evaporate crazily into the sky. This situation made Green and the others very uneasy. They were very worried that the flesh left by the ancestor would be damaged. In order to find fresh water, they searched for fresh water in a wider and wider range. In order to ensure that the ancestor could get fresh water and avoid damage to the ancestor's flesh, they had to choose to disobey the ancestor's order, that is, the order to come back during the day and stay with the ancestor at night. They had to fly farther to find fresh water, so they were on the road day and night, and collected fresh water as soon as they saw it to water the tree. But later, they despairingly discovered that the fresh water was gone and the sea water was gone. The whole world became empty. They were very desperate. They could only fly outside day after day and year after year, trying to find a drop of fresh water for the ancestor to use. Then they lived in strong anxiety every day, fearing that the ancestor's body would be damaged. Later, in the process of looking for fresh water, Levi and her friends found many creatures, one of which was called elves, which looked very similar to themselves. But when she found these creatures, Levi suddenly realized. These might be creatures created by the souls of the ancestor who left. Just like creating them, they created these elves. At first, Levi wanted to continue looking for fresh water and ignore these elves. Later, she saw these elves being chased by some ferocious beasts and didn't know what to do. Levi and her friends softened their hearts. In Levi's eyes, these little guys were very likely their brothers and sisters. Seeing their brothers and sisters being killed, she couldn't just sit back and watch. So, she landed and used the revival of all things to help them build big trees and teach them how to resist wild beasts. This teaching lasted for a long time. The elves gave Lvi and her friends a name called Elf God to show respect. Of course, Lvi and the others didn't care about this. Later, it rained, and sea water and fresh water reappeared on the earth. After seeing the sea water and fresh water, Lvi took her sisters back to the ancestor's body and began to continue their previous tasks, collecting fresh water for the tree. This kind of life lasted for a very, very long time. They also resumed their previous routines, staying on the crown of the tree during the day and looking for fresh water at night. When Lvi was free, she would sit on the branches and look in the direction where the ancestor left. She was full of expectations every day to see the ancestor come back. She could hear that familiar voice and hear the ancestor calling her name. Unfortunately, day after day, year after year, she still couldn't wait. Lvi was not disappointed or lost. She knew that one day the ancestor would come back. No matter how long it took, she would choose to wait. On this day, Lvi found that she could see a human figure in the sky. When she saw the human figure, Lvi was slightly startled. When the human figure slowly approached, Lvi showed doubts. So familiar. This existence in front of me is so familiar. Lvi has a strong sense of familiarity, but for a moment, Lvi doesn't know why it is like this. The figure slowly stopped in front of Lvi. This figure is naturally Chen Mu. Chen Mu looked at the beautiful girl in black robe in front of him. He said, "Did you change your clothes?" When Chen Mu created them before, he simply made clothes for them with leaves, but now Lvi is wearing different clothes. This means one thing: they have left here, been to land, and seen other highly intelligent creatures wearing clothes, so they would think of putting clothes on themselves. This is a good thing for Chen Mu. When Chen Mu came here, he was worried about one thing. Chen Mu wanted to turn them into angels and let them help him manage the entire huge breeding ground, but the problem is that they can't be like children who don't know anything more than 700 years ago. So, in these 700 years, they have experienced some things to make their minds mature and understand the definition of the word peace, so that they can help themselves and manage this breeding ground. Seeing that Lvi's clothes had changed made Chen Mu very surprised. Hearing this voice, Lvi's green eyes glowed with a gleam, and she was completely stunned. For a moment, she didn't even know how to react. Chen Mu only said 4 words, but when Chen Mu's voice sounded, that unique voice reawakened the dusty memory. It was him. It was the ancestor. He's back. He's finally back. Lvi was shouting in her heart, and her whole body was hit by a huge surprise. She was a little dazed and had a strong sense of unreality. "Ancestor, is it you?" Lvi asked subconsciously, her voice trembling. She was a little scared, afraid that this was a dream. For Lvi, Chen Mu was her closest existence. He was her creator and everything to her. She felt that she had to live for him since she was born. But Lvi never expected that he would abandon her, but she always believed that he would come back. She had waited for him for more than 700 years, and now he was really back. This made Lvi feel pleasantly surprised, but also a little anxious, fearing that this was just a dream, fearing that this was just her fantasy. Chen Mu looked at the tears in Lvi's green eyes, and he was slightly startled. "Is it that exaggerated?" Chen Mu said casually, "Of course it's me. Tell me about your experiences over the years. I need to know how you survived these years." Lvi heard this and hurriedly said, "Okay, okay." Seeing this, Chen Mu flapped his wings and flew in the air, watching Lvi wipe away her tears, and then narrated bit by bit everything they had done over the past 700 years. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 207. Halfway through, Chen Mu was too lazy to continue flying. He simply sat on a branch on the side and listened to the green talk. "When I heard Lu Yi say that I had seen elves," Chen Mu immediately thought of the behavior of those goblins who thought he was an elf god when they saw him. No wonder, I was wondering before, didn't those fairies see that my wings were wings? It turns out that the elves and gods they talked about were Lu Yi and the others. And behind Lu Yi and the others are wings. Chen Mu said, except for the elves, have you been to other places? Have you seen other creatures? When Lu Yi heard this, she nodded and said, I spent a long time with the elves. I had many other sisters. They dispersed from countless directions in search of water. In the process, I also saw many creatures. Speaking of this, Lu Yi paused, and she subconsciously looked at Chen Mu, ancestor, we discovered a very strange phenomenon here. Hearing this, Chen Mu was slightly startled, a strange phenomenon. Liu Yi hummed and said, later, when the sea water and fresh water came back, we all flew back here. Those sisters would chat together when they were idle and bored. Later, we found that the sisters who flew away from the north followed the older sister flew away from the south and met, the sister who flew away from the east met the sister from the west, and some sisters flew around and found themselves flying back to their original place. This is the case for many of us, but we are all the same. Flying in different directions, so strange. Oh. Chen Mu knows this because the earth is spherical. In other words, many of these little guys flew around the earth in search of fresh water. But that's it for sure. During this long period of time, they have flown all over the earth, and the communication between these little guys when they are idle and bored must have allowed them to understand the world. In other words, they are no longer the innocent and ignorant little guys they were more than 700 years ago. However, Chen Mu still had to ask in the end. Chen Mu said, Lvi, what do you think peace is? Hearing this, Lu Yi looked at Chen Mu subconsciously. Lu Yi didn't know why Chen Mu asked this, but she still gave the answer to the ancestor's question, peace means not hurting each other and living in friendship. Hearing this, Chen Mu said, then do you hope for peace? Lu Yi hummed, where I used to live among the elves, the orcs nearby would always hurt the elves. I didn't want to hurt those orcs, but I also didn't want to see the elves get hurt. At that time, I just like being able to have peace. Qualified, this girl is a peaceful little guy by nature. As a farmer, Chen Mu was very pleased to see the little guy he left behind grow into a being that meets his conditions as a worker. Chen Mu withdrew his gaze, looked forward, and said, your sixth sense at that time was not wrong. Those elves were indeed created by me. Her green eyes lit up slightly, and a smile appeared on her face. She had spent a long time regretting the choices she had made. At that time, in that environment, fresh water could not be found anywhere, but no matter whether it could be found or not, in their opinion, she should search for it wholeheartedly. Although Liu Yi was helping the elves while looking for him at the time, she still felt a little regretful and felt that she did not put her heart and soul into the ancestor. At the same time, he was also a little afraid that his feelings were wrong, and afraid that the elves he helped were not his brothers and sisters. In this way, the error becomes even greater. Therefore, all the time, Liu Yi always thinks of his original decision and wonders whether it was right or wrong. Now after hearing what Chen Mu said, Lu Yi suddenly became happy. However, except for the elves, the orcs, humans, and dragons you saw before, all the creatures you saw were created by me, Chen Mu said slowly. Lu Yi was startled, and she subconsciously looked at Chen Mu. She never expected that such a thing would happen. Chen Mu said, for more than 700 years, the entire world has undergone changes, and all life has ushered in death and extinction. When I saw that there were no living creatures in this world, I created all the creatures in front of me. Lu Yi looked at Chen Mu, her eyes full of admiration and obsession. This is her ancestor, the creator of everything. Of course, Chen Mu would not tell her that the changes of more than 700 years were caused by him. Chen Mu is not only the creator of the world, but also the demon of destruction. Of course, there is no need to hide this, but if you don't hide it, it will be too troublesome to explain, and you have to talk about things like the system, and it is not necessary. What Shenmue has to do now is to make the greenery love peace, protect all the creatures in this breeding area, and just be a good worker. Therefore, your image must be that of a perfect good farmer. Shenmue said, it's just that now I find that these beings are clearly created by me, but they are killing each other. I want to stop them from killing each other, spread peace and kindness, and want them to help each other, but this world is too I'm old and I need help. Weak. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Shenmue came back to his senses and found that before he knew it, a group of little guys had gathered nearby. They were looking at Shenmue with excitement on their faces. Some are standing on the branches, some are sitting on the branches, and some are flying in the air. But without exception, these little guys are looking at Shenmue with an eager admiration, excitement, and joy. Ancestor, we can do it. We are all created by the Ancestor. We will do whatever the Ancestor tells us to do. As long as the Ancestor can use us, we will do it. Well, we want the Ancestor to need us, and we hope that the Ancestor can use us. They looked at Shenmue expectantly. Looking forward to Shenmue's orders. Looking forward to the orders that Shenmue will give them more than 700 years later. The meaning of some existences is to be needed by certain existences. Many social animals hope that they can be needed by others. When a person is not needed by others, then life will lose its meaning, and the mood will be depressed. Even when the mood is depressed to a certain extent, they will deny themselves and feel that even if there is no me in the world, it doesn't matter. Of course, being needed by strangers or hated people does not make people happy. But if they are needed by their loved ones, or by the people they admire and respect, then it is enough to make them willing to do anything. For these little guys, being needed by their Creator is their greatest joy. Seeing the Ancestor come back, they are not only surprised and excited, but also have strong excitement and expectations, looking forward to being needed by Shenmue. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Shenmue Nian. Chapter 208. Shenmue looked at these little guys with expectant faces. He showed a kind smile and said, I came to you this time because I wanted you to help me. However, after hearing this, do you know what I want? I know, it's peace, the girl next to him replied. She looked at Shenmue with joy on her face and reverence in her eyes. Shenmue just thought she looked familiar, but Shenmue didn't recognize her. There are 100,000 of these little guys, and each one has its own name. Some were given by Shenmue, and some were chosen by himself later. But Shenmue didn't remember it. After all, there were too many. At that time, Shenmue, who was a banyan tree, could not move his body and could only rely on them to collect fresh water for himself, so he created so many of them and then left them here to fend for themselves. For Shenmue, they were just tools from the beginning, so naturally he would not go out of his way to remember the names of the tools. Of course, this is the case for Shenmue, but for these little guys, Shenmue is their creator, the being who gives them life, consciousness, and wisdom, and the supreme being. Shenmue said with a smile, yes, it is peace. But the problem is. He looked at the sky and said, there are wars everywhere in this world now. Humans fight humans, humans fight orcs, and elves fight goblins. They are always going to die. But they are all my creations, and I don't want them to. So. Shenmue looked at the little ones around him and said, I want you to stop those wars, restore peace to this world, and then protect the peace of this world. If I were to be the one who created these beings, I would still be able to protect them. They can live well and reproduce. As long as they don't fight, they will look for food and give birth to babies, so that they can increase their numbers. The more they are, the faster Chenmu will gain evolutionary energy. Of course, it would be better not to say the true purpose now. When Lu Yi heard this, he said, "We will definitely fulfill our ancestors' instructions." She looked at Chenmu seriously. "Yes, we will definitely protect the peace of this world and prevent those wars." Other little guys also echoed. Hearing this, Chenmu said, "That's good." He stood up, flapped his wings, and flew up. He said, "I will change a place for you. All the little ones, all leave my incarnation. I will take the incarnation back first." When the little guys heard this, they flew up one by one and left the huge banyan tree. The banyan tree turned into golden light, and the light quickly shrank into a ball of light and submerged into Chenmu's body. This banyan tree is one of Chenmu's incarnations, and taking it back is just a matter of thought. After the banyan tree was taken back, Chenmu looked forward and saw countless little ones, covering the entire sky, 100,000 of them. This number was still shocking. Seeing this number of little guys, Chenmu suddenly felt so happy. He was having a headache because there were no workers on this huge farm, but now these 100,000 free workers really made Chenmu happy. However, it is still difficult to change their bodies from their current appearance to that of angels. Because this requires atomic creation, first use atomic creation to dismantle their bodies, and then use atomic creation to create them again. Of course, this is much simpler than starting something from scratch. Because these little guys already have angel wings, they just need to change the color of their dark green hair, ears, and eyes. In fact, Chenmu could have left them alone and let them go directly to work mode. But this is not possible. Chenmu has obsessive-compulsive disorder. He made an angel before and defined the position of the angel race. Now if he just lets them look like this, he will set off directly. This is so maddening. So, no. However, do you want to change their image in this place? Chenmu looked at the sea water below. The sea water is steaming. Although the temperature in the earth is not as high as before, causing water to reappear in this world, the temperature of sea water, lake water, and river water is still very high. The sea water now is almost like a hot spring. In the sky above the sea, change the image of these 100,000 little guys. Chenmu couldn't bear it, so he thought to himself, "Let's find another place." "Let's go, I'll take you to a place," Chenmu said, sharing various abilities with them. There was a hint of luster in the green eyes, and the faces of the other little guys were full of novelty. Obviously, they have all received abilities. Chenmu said, "Follow me." As he spoke, Chenmu flapped his wings and flew into the air in an instant. Lu Yi took one look, flapped her wings, and hurried after him. When those little guys saw it, they flapped their wings and rushed to catch up. Chenmu quickly passed through the Earth's atmosphere and came into space. He looked back and saw that Lu Yi and the others had also followed, but after leaving the space, they were still flapping their wings, but they couldn't move their bodies at all. Look at their confused looks. Seeing this, Chenmu said, "This is in space, there is no air, and the wings are useless. You use your control ability to control your body to fly." Hearing this, the little ones understood. Chenmu continued to move forward, and the little ones followed Chenmu and flew forward. "Sister, look." Wai Wei, who was next to her, approached Liu Yi and said to her. Upon hearing this, Liu Yi noticed that Wai Wei was looking back. Lvi looked back subconsciously, and her eyes narrowed slightly. Behind her, a blue-green planet appeared in her field of vision. "The place where we live is spherical." Lvi's eyes shone with a glimmer, and she retracted her gaze. "No wonder we sisters flew back to the original place before, it turned out to be like this. Now they have left the place, and their bodies are in space. In space, they can't survive with their bodies, and at the same time, sound cannot be transmitted in a vacuum. The reason why they can survive is because of their ability to adapt instantly, which is also the reason why they can live on the earth without oxygen. The system regards them as the incarnation of Chenmu, that is, the banyan tree, so if Chenmu obtains the ability to adapt instantly, the tree also obtains it, and they also obtain it. As for their conversation in the vacuum, it is because of the ability to share the same language. Soon, Chenmu landed on the surface of the moon. He slowly folded his wings and looked behind him. The little guys behind him landed on the moon one by one. They were looking around curiously. Chenmu said, "From now on, this is where you live, the heaven. Below, the blue planet you see is the mortal world." The little guys looked at each other, and some looked at the blue planet. Chenmu said, "Then let's start. Atoms create one. The ability acts on the hundreds of people in front at the same time. Under the gaze of other little guys, these little guys' bodies are wrapped in gold. The ears become pointed, and the hair changes from dark green to gold. One after another, workers named angels are born at this moment. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 209. Chenmu spent a week and finally turned these 100,000 little guys into 100,000 angels. After obtaining the abilities given to them by Chenmu, they flew from the moon to the earth, or should be said, from the heaven to the mortal world, and began their life of working for free indefinitely. And Chenmu comfortably worked as a hands-off shopkeeper. The angels helped him take care of the farm called the earth, and he enjoyed the increase in evolutionary energy progress every day. This time was really wonderful. Enjoying the pleasure of being a shopkeeper, Chenmu, who could be lazy, built a house with atomic creation, and then lay down on the big bed in the house. He closed his eyes and slept. It feels good not to have to think. I hope that after the sleep, I can usher in the next evolution when I wake up. Don't know how long it has been. Ancestor. A voice came. Chenmu frowned slightly when he heard the voice, and his consciousness gradually returned. He slowly opened his eyes, revealing his black eyes. He turned his face slightly and looked at the source of the sound. At the door of the room, Lu Yi was standing there, looking at Chenmu uneasily. Behind Lu Yi, there were still 6 little guys standing. Seeing Chenmu wake up, each of them looked a little uneasy and frightened. Seeing the expressions of these 7 little guys, Chenmu had a thought in his mind. Something happened. Could it be that these girls, like me, have committed another mass extinction? Looking back, with the abilities I have given these little guys, it is not difficult for them to wipe out life on a planet. If there is another ecological mass extinction on the earth, I will have to create living things again, and I will have to wait. That wouldn't be fun. These thoughts flashed through Chenmu's mind. He slowly stood up, adjusted his mood, leaned against the bed, looked at the 7 little guys, and said, "How long have I been sleeping?" "Ancestor, 3 years and 5 months," Lu Yi said softly. "More than 3 years? That didn't take long. Compared to the 700 years or more that I had slept before, more than 3 years, it was just a drizzle." Chenmu looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked a little uneasy. "Ancestor, I'm sorry, we encountered a problem that we can't handle, and we have to disturb you when you are sleeping. It's all our fault for being incompetent and useless." Hearing this, Chenmu looked at them in fear. Chenmu was a little confused. "Ah, isn't it just disturbing your sleep? I am not a stingy person, do I need to be so afraid?" Chenmu adjusted his mood and said slowly, "It's okay. Do all 7 of you have problems?" They all nodded. Chenmu scratched his hair and said, "Okay. It seems that this hands-off shopkeeper still needs to help solve the problems encountered by the workers. but that's a lot better than running the entire planet. Chen Mu looked at Lu Yi, tell me your problem. Lu Yi adjusted her mood, looked at Chen Mu and said, 3 years ago, Wei Wei and I acted together to prevent the war between Lis and Dongming. Isn't this the daily work life of an angel? Any questions? Chen Mu had doubts. Liu Yi said, this war is a war launched by King Rhys against Dongming Kingdom. The reason is that King Dongming defiled King Rhys's wife. After we stopped the war, King Rhys's wife committed suicide, and King Rhys also died in love. In the past 3 years, after that country lost its king, people began to burn, kill, and loot. After we discovered the situation, we started to stop them, but every time we stopped them, they would continue after we left. Lu Yi looked at Chen Mu and said helplessly, Ancestor, things have become so difficult to control. Hearing this, Chen Mu couldn't help but stretched out his hand and put it on his face. It is obvious that wars cannot occur for no reason. Some are for resources, some are for hegemony, and of course some are for grudges. Others were fought to overthrow the rule of tyrants. It can be said that the current civilization on Earth is full of flowers, including good flowers and bad flowers. Those civilizations have only developed for more than 700 years. They are completely backward civilizations. Naturally, the laws cannot be perfect. The rule of a tyrant has caused countless wars. Chen Mu asked the angels to stop the war, and at the same time told the angels that these creatures were all created by him, so naturally the angels did not dare to actually take action. As a result, the just war is prevented, the country is in chaos, and the people at the bottom can only choose to burn, kill, and loot in order to survive. The final result was more casualties. When Lu Yi finished talking about what she had encountered, Chen Mu's brain started to spin, and he figured out the reason for all this. After thinking about it, Chen Mu realized why Lu Yi and the others were so uneasy. When I gave the order, I had too little to think about. I just want to stop the war, but how can a war be solved so easily? Chen Mu said, I know the reason. Greenery, he said. When Lu Yi heard this, her eyes glowed and she looked at Chen Mu, Ancestor, Lu Yi is here. Come here, Chen Mu said. Lu Yi moved closer to Chen Mu. At this moment, a golden light appeared in front of Lu Yi. That is the light produced by the creation of atoms. As the light spots condensed, a silver sword appeared in front of Lu Yi. Green eyes were shining as he looked at the long sword. The long sword is suspended in mid-air. Chen Mu said, although all the creatures in this world were created by me, there are good and evil creatures among the lives I created. I give you the right to execute evil people and deprive them of their lives. So here's the problem. Why execute evil people instead of good people? The reason is very simple, because only evil people kill people. If one evil person kills 2 people, it is equivalent to directly reducing the evolutionary energy obtained by the 2 people. As long as all the bad guys are killed, the good guys will not kill, and then the good guys will do whatever they need to do, eat when they need to eat, and have babies when they need to. This is a virtuous circle. Her green eyes lit up slightly, and she slowly raised her hand and took the long sword. Yes, Lu Yi looked at Chen Mu and said, Ancestor, Lu Yi understands. Chen Mu said, I want you to stop the war, but I am not asking you to directly use force to stop the war. There are just wars and evil wars. As God's messengers and angels, you should stand in the direction of justice. Frankly speaking, Chen Mu wanted to stop the war forcefully from the beginning. He thought that if the war was stopped, those fools would go back to eat and have babies. It was only after hearing what Lu Yi encountered that he realized that the situation was not that simple, so he changed his mind. Of course, as a farmer, Chen Mu would not admit his mistakes, so he hinted that it was obviously your misunderstanding and it was none of my business. Lu Yi and the others understood immediately. It turns out that we have always understood it wrong. Lu Yi was a little depressed and said, We misunderstood the ancestors' statement and thought that by not killing and preventing war, we can make the world peaceful. It's all our fault for thinking about things too simply. Chen Mu continued, you must stand on the stand of justice, do things based on the principle of justice, punish evil people, praise kind people, let evil people fear angels, and let kind people be praised by angels. Only in this way can the world be prosperous, there will be peace. Lu Yi looked at Chen Mu, who was sitting on the bed and calmly teaching them how to deal with kindness, justice, and peace. Her eyes couldn't help but shine with luster, and her eyes were filled with admiration. The other 6 angels looked at Chen Mu with admiration and respect in their eyes. This is their ancestor, their creator. He is so wise and has easily solved the problems that have troubled them for so long. He is simply the embodiment of wisdom, an omniscient and omnipotent existence. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 210. After Chen Mu instilled the concept of justice in them and gave them the right to punish criminals, the problem of LVE was solved. Chen Mu's eyes fell on the other 6 angels, and his eyes fell on one of the angels, saying, "What about you? What's the problem?" The angel walked out. Chen Mu knew the name of this angel. Her name was Cheng. He heard it inadvertently when he heard the little girl chatting before. Cheng looked at Chen Mu and said, "It's like this, ancestor, when Ying Ying and I were collecting intelligence in the mortal world, we went to the east of the continent. We found that those people in the eastern continent did not know the existence of the God of creation. When we came in your name, the people over there treated us as monsters." Chen Mu looked at the angel in front of him, and he was confused. Is this a problem? Even if those guys have never heard of Chen Mu and don't know angels, as long as they show their abilities, the angels will naturally let them remember them. This is not a problem. Sure enough, Qing had something else to say. If that was the case, we could actually use time to let them know of our existence, but before we could do anything, a giant dragon came to us and said that they were the gods of that place. The people of that continent also called that dragon a god and respected it very much. When the dragon saw us, it asked us to leave their territory. Chen Mu crossed his arms. What's the problem? But it's just a big lizard with wings, just kill it. Qing continued, she said, we remembered your instructions, so we wanted to stay there to see if there would be a war or something, so we rejected it. As a result, the dragon attacked us. During the battle, we found that no matter how we attacked the dragon, it was useless. Qing looked at Chen Mu and said, it has a very strong self-healing ability. We use our control ability to control matter and attack it at the speed of light. It can recover in the first time through its body. We fought with it for a while, and it couldn't hurt us, but we were worried about affecting other highly intelligent creatures, so we didn't continue to fight and chose to retreat. Attacking matter at the speed of light, the attack power is almost unimaginable, but the opponent can still recover? At this moment, Chen Mu thought of 4 words, extremely fast self-healing. Hearing this, Chen Mu's heart moved, and he looked at Qing. What does that giant dragon look like? Qing said, it's an eastern dragon, and its body looks like a snake. Eastern dragon, this thing was created by him using atoms more than 700 years ago. He created a batch of silicon-based Eastern dragons, but Chen Mu remembered very clearly that he did not give those silicon-based Eastern dragons the ability to heal themselves very quickly. At the same time, Chen Mu also remembered that before the creation of atoms, Chen Mu did create a batch of Eastern dragons, and also gave those Eastern dragons the ability to heal themselves very quickly. But the problem is that he did not give them the ability to adapt instantly at that time. In that mass extinction, Chen Mu thought that the batch of Eastern dragons had died. Could it be, not dead? If they didn't die, how did they survive, relying entirely on rapid self-healing to survive? How is this possible? Those Eastern dragons are carbon-based creatures. Without the ability to adapt instantly, they lived on that earth. You know, even in the current Earth, the oxygen is extremely thin, and it is full of sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. Even if they have rapid self-healing, they can only die, and keep dying. After death, they were revived by the extremely fast self-healing, then died again and healed again, and then died again and healed again. Then how could they not be alive now? Why? Thinking of this, Chen Mu frowned. Forget it, it's useless to continue thinking about it, just go and see and you will know everything. Chen Mu flapped his wings and flew out of the house. The 7 angels of green looked at each other, and also flapped their wings to follow Chen Mu. Chen Mu's sight fell on the direction of the earth in front. Before, the dragon base he created was above the equator, just look for a circle. Chen Mu's speed can reach the speed of light, and his consciousness field of vision currently has a radius of 1 million meters, that is, he can currently see a circle with a diameter of 2 million meters. That is a very terrifying field of vision. With the help of the speed and consciousness field of vision, it is too easy to find a creature on the earth. As long as you know the approximate location, of course, it doesn't matter if you don't know the approximate location. At most, it will take some time to turn the entire Earth over. It only takes a little over a second to get from the moon to the Earth at Chen Mu's speed of light. It took him a second to arrive above the place where he created the dragon clan. Chen Mu flapped his wings and flew in the air. He looked around. This place was exactly the same as it was more than 700 years ago, surrounded by the ocean. However, no dragon clan was seen. The 7 angels led by Lve also came to Chen Mu and followed behind him. Chen Mu was about to open his consciousness to search. Suddenly, "Where did you come from? How dare you break into the territory of my dragon clan?" an old voice sounded slowly. Along with this voice, the ocean suddenly rippled with a 100-meter-high splash, and a huge monster broke out from the sea. A green-colored oriental dragon appeared in front of Chen Mu. It was staring at Chen Mu and others with its huge crocodile eyes. The hot sea water flowed down along this huge body, fell on the sea surface, and created waves of water. Azure Dragon. When Chen Mu saw this azure dragon, he was sure. Because Chen Mu knew this azure dragon. This guy was one of the 3 blue algae breeders he hired at the beginning. It was still alive, so it goes without saying that the other dragons were probably alive. The dragons that Qing encountered were obviously them. At the same time, bang bang bang, accompanied by a series of sounds. One after another, giant dragons appeared from the sea. They were staring at Chen Mu and others with the eyes of looking at the enemy. Seeing this, Lve frowned and held the hilt of the sword tightly. The other 6 angels also looked alert. Chen Mu crossed his arms and looked back at the oriental dragons with shrimp whiskers, crocodile heads, lion manes, and snake bodies around him. His sight fell on the slightly older-looking azure dragon in front of him again, and he said, "Not bad, you have improved. I haven't seen you for such a long time, and you have become braver. You don't even take me seriously anymore." When Chen Mu's voice sounded, the old azure dragon was stunned at first, and then his pupils dilated instantly.